Hey guys, this is Avilo here, and I'm bringing you metagame update number 13. I'm a few days behind in this one, so forgive me on that. But yeah, this metagame update is going to be, the last one was about Hellbats, and the one before that one was about Hellbats. Guess what this one is not about particularly? Well, it's not going to be about Hellbats, but it is going to be about the latest situation report or patch change that Blizzard has decided is going to go through. And it's going to be about Mech TvP and how it doesn't exist right now, and it should exist, but Blizzard's done nothing to help Mech TvP not be shit. So I made a couple posts on the Blizzard forums. I also have read a bunch here. But first off, I'm going to go over here what David Kim and the Blizzard Balance team have said. They've said that the Warp Prism change is actually going to go through. So they're making the Warp Prism faster, and I mentioned this in, I think it was 2 metagame updates ago, that this was bad. It was unnecessary. What does this change do? They're basically increasing the movement speed and the acceleration, and when it has the speed upgrade, it'll be the same as it is now. So what does this actually do to the Warp Prism and the matchups? It makes all-in stronger against Terran and Zerg, and maybe even Protoss. It makes all-in stronger. It just makes the Warp Prism stronger in the early and mid-game. And this is, it's a little ridiculous to give even more harassment to a race that already has proxy oracles that are really prevalent and has one of the best late games with Warp-In, the Warp-In mechanic. You can't give a race that has the best late game death ball compositions really, mega good harassment like this, because then it makes it even easier to turtle into that death ball. You notice that Terran has pretty good harass with the Medivacs, like really good harass with the speed boosted Medivacs, but Terran doesn't have the easiest to use late game death ball. They have Ghost Viking against Protoss, but it's not the same. Terran doesn't have Warp-In. Terran doesn't have this forgiving late game mechanic, whereas Protoss does. And so this Warp Prism buff, what does it do? It just opens up a new variety of all-ins against Terran. What the one Warp Prism Colossus drop. Your Viking will not be able to catch this anymore. Against Zerg, it opens up the force field, the sentry drop on the ramp with the force fields. That'll get to the Zerg's base a little bit sooner than it normally would. And that's bad. And what is, once again, late game, nothing changes. The speed upgrade's exactly the same speed. So really, this just makes Protoss harassment even better, and it makes all-ins even stronger. So really, this change should not be going through. It is for whatever reason. And on top of this, what's the kicker here? What's the final nail? What's the final worst part about this change? It's a nerf, another one to Mech TvP viability. This is the biggest thing, I guess, that I could say about this metagame update. It's just every patch they've done something to nerf Mech TvP viability. It's just crazy. They do it either directly or indirectly. In this case, it's an indirect nerf to Mech TvP, because now the Warp Prism is so fast. A single Viking, you won't be able to chase down the Warp Prism. That's not speed upgraded. That makes it easier to use Warp Prisms to counterattack against Mech, like really easy. So this is just another fuck you to people that want Mech TvP to be viable. With this mega fast Warp Prism, it just makes it makes Mech TvP even worse. If you guys can imagine that, I don't know how it could get even worse than it is, but patch by patch, Blizzard basically just gives the middle finger to Mech Terran vs Protoss. So with that said, it's a terrible change. They've held off on the Hellbat change. They've held off on the Banshee Cloak change. And I think they held off on the Hellbat change because a lot of people are like, well, this is a nerf to every matchup. You're nerfing the Hellbat in like every matchup. It's a problem in Terran versus Terran, but if you do this blue flame nerf, it nerfs it nerfs mech across the board in every single matchup. So I think they're holding off on that, and I hope, and everybody should hope, every Terran especially, should hope that they're looking for a different solution. Really, the solution here is obvious. It's been there. It's up to the developers to find the best solution, but it's in there. It's called remove the biological tag from the Hellbat, and it will not be a problem in drops anymore. It won't be this issue where you drop 4 Hellbats out of 2 medevacs in a Terran versus Terran, and you can't kill them because you don't have the minimum required units to eat through the medevac healing on the Hellbats. So really, it's an easy change. Make the Hellbat a mech unit like it was supposed to be, and that leads me into the next part of this metagame update. TvP Mech viability. It's not viable right now. People have done it. I'm sure Koreans in pro houses have done it. It's really bad for a multitude of reasons. Just like I described right there, the Hellbat being biological means archons do essentially an extra zealot worth of damage to a Hellbat. So if an archon hits a Hellbat in the face, it's like there's an imaginary zealot with the archon hitting each time. So the archons are doing more damage to Hellbats than they actually should be because of the biological tag. So that's one reason that needs to be removed. Another reason why Mech TvP is still not viable, they overbuffed the Tempest during the beta. The Tempest right now is at 4 supply. And what this means is, if you're trying to play mech against Protoss, what will oftentimes happen, the Protoss players that are Grandmasters and pro gamer level that know what they're doing, they'll just start massing Tempest because they're 4 supply each. It's easy mode. What ends up happening is they just get this huge army of like mass Tempest with Templar underneath it. And I said this like months ago. I said this needs to be removed from the game, needs to be addressed because Tempest at 4 supply is too cheap. What the Tempest was meant to do for Heart of the Swarm was be a counter to Broodlord Infestor for Protoss. It wasn't meant to be the end-all be-all, just make mech suck in TvP, which is what it's doing right now at 4 supply. It shouldn't be a massable unit either, so I guess this metagame update is also talking about the Tempest right now, where it's at. It shouldn't be this easily massable 4 supply unit. 4 supply is too cheap supply-wise for the unit, and it has a little bit too much health as well for what it does, for having the longest range in the game. And you're starting to, I told Blizzard this during the beta. I posted replays of me playing Protoss abusing the shit out of Tempest Templar, and now we're starting to see it even in Pro League and pro games where you're seeing these Protoss players start to add in these Tempests and get a lot of them in the late game, and then they get Templar, and it needs a supply change. It's at 4 supply, it's too much. They originally changed it to 4 supply in the beta because no one was using them. Go figure. Everybody thought the Tempest sucked. It's actually pretty good. Recently we saw in the GSL finals, we saw SOS sort of using them against Terran late game with Tempest Templar. It's the god composition. It's like Broodlord Infestor, but against mech, it's actually just a free win. If you get to Tempest Templar, if you get 20 Tempest and Templar, you're just basically free winning the game. So that's another thing, thing they need to address for Mech TvP. Mech TvP should be viable, and there's the siege tank. It still sucks against Protoss. It's the worst feeling in the world to be playing against a Protoss player. You have everything sieged up, all your Hellbats in front of the tanks, and the Protoss charges into you, knowing that your army's already sieged. You can even be up a ramp, it doesn't matter. They just charge into your army and come out even or ahead after the battle because of immortals, and it's just mind-boggling that the tank is still this sucky. That's another reason why Mech TvP is not viable. The tank fucking sucks against Protoss. It doesn't have the damage output to make mech really something to work. And now Blizzard, one of their statements was from David Kim, they don't want slow, turtley stuff in the game. and that's one of the reasons why they're afraid to actually work on mech TvP, because right now I can tell they're not. Everybody can tell, you know, right now they basically have the middle finger to mech Terran versus Protoss, but that's what Heart of the Swarm was supposed to bring us. Viable mech versus Protoss. And so if they don't want it, you know, it's understandable that they don't want a slow turtley game, but if that's their worry, then they actually need to fix it so that you don't have to turtle with mech. You know, because right now you actually have to, if you want to try mech versus Protoss, you 100% have to turtle against the really good Protosses that know what they're doing. It's not viable. You have to turtle into your own, you know, death ball or whatever, and it makes for a slow-paced, you know, slow-paced game because you can't attack. Tanks are too shitty to attack. Widow mines are too cost inefficient to really work. So you're stuck. If they have mass immortals, you have to wait. You have to turtle until you have ghosts with your army, and then if they switch into air, you have to wait again until you have the proper number of Vikings in your army. So basically what ends up happening is you have to wait, and then you have to wait again, and then you're maxed out, and then by that time Protoss has the Tempest, you know, what I just mentioned earlier, the mass Tempest Templar issue, where it's just actually broken against mech. So let's hope that they actually change and tweak the game so that mech TvP is viable, starting with the Hellbat, remove the biological tag. Everybody's saying it, I'm saying it, everybody in the forums that knows what they're talking about. The masters and grandmasters that I've seen posting, a lot of them agree. There's a couple, the argument against not removing it is that it hurts bio plus Hellbat, but it doesn't really hurt that, because it just doesn't. Hellbats aren't really meant to be used with bio. You sort of can anyways right now, but really Ghost, Viking, and bio units are that's even enough to play against Protoss in the late game. You don't need Hellbats. Hellbats are just like icing on the cake, essentially. What they should be doing is focusing on making mech actually work. So that's why this Warp Prism buff is really, it's mind-boggling that they're going through with this. I think they'll revert it, but we'll have to see. So I guess that's this metagame update, guys. They're buffing the Warp Prism. It's an indirect, you know, F you, fuck you to mech TvP. They need to work on mech TvP. They actually need to make it viable. Whatever bias they have against slow, methodical, positional play, they should understand that people actually want to see this. There's a lot of players that want to see mech TvP become viable. We don't just want to see bio every game. So yeah, and the Tempest, the Tempest, once again, it's too supply efficient right now. 4 supply, it should be 8 supply, and I'm saying that as an extreme value. Obviously, they're not going to change it that extreme, but it should be at least 6 supply. Truly, and that's another thing that I posted about is, you guys may have noticed something. If you've seen Terran versus Zerg games lately, the games are exciting and they're pretty cool and dynamic and back and forth. And the reason that is because it's ground versus ground. For like 95% of the games, pro games, Grandmaster Masters, Ultralisks are really good. And so the game's a ground versus ground battle, instead of just Broodlord Infestor, where they have these really cost-efficient air units, and so Terran has to make a bajillion Vikings and Ravens every game no matter what. So now the games are more dynamic because it's ground units against ground units instead of just a huge air death ball. And so the same thing goes for Protoss. They should not have this in the game where you can just make this huge death ball of air units and then the game becomes about, oh, do I have enough anti-air? Suddenly my army is worthless if I don't have enough anti-air to kill the Tempest, you know? And the same thing, it's not really a problem with Terran because battlecruisers sort of suck. It's tough to get to that, like, you know, it's tough to get that air death ball with Terran, so it's not as much of a, you don't really see the air death ball with Terran because it's not so viable at the pro level to you don't really have the time to get 8,000 battlecruisers against Zerg and Protoss. You do in TvT, but, you know, that's TvT. So yeah, I mean, that's it for this metagame update, guys. The Warp Prism buff, really bad for the game. It's a change that was unneeded, unnecessary. It's going to make all-in stronger for Protoss. Mech TvP viability, they need to start actually doing what they advertised and what their own design was for the game, which their design for Heart of the Swarm for Terran was mech viability, mech becoming more viable. So they need to actually do something about that, please. Every Terran has been waiting for it. So do something, you know. Make mech viable TvP. Please listen to the community. Just, you know, make it more viable. And the last thing, the Tempest. It's at 4 supply. It needs to be 6 or 8 supply. It's ridiculous that the Tempest is one of these units that is causing mech to suck against Protoss because you can get so many of them so easily. So that's it. This has been Metagame Update number 13. Please leave comments. Spread the video around to forums, your friends, your family, whoever. And thank you guys for watching, and I will have another one of these up within the week. So, peace, and see you later.